Welcome to the third of our three-series discussion about the 19 traits of negative people. This is Michael Yardney in Australia with Tom Corley in the United States. Hello, Tom.
Hey, Michael, how you doing?
Good, thank you. Now, if you've been enjoying this series, please pass it forward. Send the link of this through Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, whichever way you've got it, or from our web pages. That'd be fantastic. If you haven't been following the last couple of weeks, for the last 2 weeks, Tom and I have been discussing the 19 traits of negative people. We write a lot about and speak a lot about what successful people do, but Tom, I know your feeling is that you actually get as much by learning what not to do.
Yeah, so Michael, to me, it's knowing what to do gets you halfway down the field. Knowing what not to do takes you all the way to the goal line. So it's great to know what wealthy people, successful people do, but it's only going to get you so far in life. You actually have to know and how to navigate around the things that you shouldn't be doing.
Well, that's because we're all driving around with one foot on the accelerator and one on the brake. We have rich habits and we all have poor habits. And what we're wanting to do is get more of the rich habits and cut back some of the poor habits. And a lot of these come from Tom and my book, Rich Habits, Poor Habits. Now, of course, the basis of much of this has been Tom's Rich Habits study that he did for 5 years of wealthy people and the 2,000 people that I've mentored over the last decade as well. If you haven't got your own copy of Rich Habits, Poor Habits yet, go to richhabitspoorhabits.com and you'll be able to find out how you can get it, either a hard copy or a soft copy book on Amazon or Google Play, so you can read it on your Kindle or whatever. So Tom, so far in the last couple of weeks, and guys, if you haven't actually had a chance to watch them yet, go back to our websites and you can actually get these from previous weeks. We discussed the 19 traits of negative people. We discussed Tom's study showing that negative people are pessimistic, they've got doubts, they've got fears, they've got constant worries, they gossip, and that's not good. They're deceitful, they get angry, they tend to complain, and they tend to criticize. They're envious, and a lot of this comes from the fact that they're not grateful, they're jealous, they condemn people, and they're selfish. Tom, I want to go through the last of these traits. And one of the ones that you come up with in your study is that negative people are, let's be blunt, cheap.
Yeah, so I want to differentiate between cheap and frugal because I get asked this a lot. What's the difference between being cheap and frugal? Well, cheap is when you look for the lowest price, irrespective of the quality of whatever the product or the service is that you're buying. Frugal is you focus on the quality first, and then you try and get the lowest price. So frugal people try to get the best quality at the lowest price. Now, cheap is a mindset. When you start thinking, oh, I want to preserve my money all the time, and it can filter into your relationships. We know we have cheap friends. And we have frugal friends. The difference is when you have a frugal friend, they'll ante up, if you're at a bar or restaurant, and they'll pay their fair share. A cheap friend will try and manipulate you and try and get their share down. So, and cheap, nobody likes to associate with cheap people. So they're actually, the cheap people are operating from a mindset of scarcity. And the frugal people are operating from a mindset of getting value, getting the most value for their money.
Sure. I've also found that cheap people are not generous. They don't give to charity. And I know that's important to you. It's important to you and Denise, important to Pam and me, that part of being wealthy is being able to give, truly wealthy, is being able to give back to the community, giving back to the society that's allowed us to get to where we are. It's an important bit. That's part of what we're doing now, educating people for free as well. But it's also putting your hand in your pocket at times, and it's also doing some of the physical charity work I know you do, Tom.
Yeah, that's right. And cheap people don't like to contribute to charities because, like I said, they're trying to hold on to the money because they don't believe, because of their scarcity mindset, that they're ever going to make more money. They're stuck in the mindset that they're limited, their earning potential is limited, their wealth is limited, and so they don't want to give their money away to anybody.
It gets back to one of the other negative traits we discussed last week, that they're selfish. Tom, another negative trait of people is that they tend to blame others. Their problems are not their fault. They don't take responsibility. It's always somebody else's fault.
Yeah, and this is such a big problem right now in society. Um, Nobody wants to take responsibility. It's always somebody else's fault. They blame the government. They blame Wall Street. They blame politicians. We had a movement in the U.S. called Occupy Wall Street. These were the kids who were running around with $300, $400 cell phones, complaining that the wealthy were taking all of their money. Well, half of them didn't even have jobs, so how could they be taking their money? They're not earning anything. So what they were really complaining about was, hey, you know what? I want to be given stuff. I don't want to have to work for it. And that's because they don't want to take responsibility for their own lives.
Interestingly, I remember those days of Occupy Wall Street, and they were talking about the 1% who've got everything. But for many parts of the world, those people who are complaining are the 1% for those people in the underdeveloped countries, aren't they?
Yeah, the 99% who are in Occupy Wall Street, they would be the equivalent of billionaires in some countries. And this goes back to, the gratitude, not being grateful and being envious.
Of course, it also goes back to feeling you're a victim, and there's no such thing as a rich victim. You've got to learn to be in control of your life and be the pilot, not the passenger. Another trait that you came across that negative people have is that they seem to be unapologetic. They never apologize for their actions, those things that hurt other people.
Yeah, they're always right. Isn't that amazing? You run into a negative person, and they're always 100% right. Their opinion is always the right opinion. They're not open-minded, Michael. Negative people are closed-minded. So this is why they don't want to apologize, because they're closed-minded. Successful people are open-minded. The reason they're open-minded, or the reason it's critical to their success to be open-minded, is because when you're pursuing success and you have an open mind, that allows you to learn new information. It allows you to absorb knowledge that might alter your behavior or your thinking or the investments that you make or the course of action that you take. When you're closed-minded, you immediately say, well, that information is incorrect. And that's what negative people do. They have a closed mindset, so they don't want to hear anybody else's opinion, and they're unapologetic for their own opinion.
Now, as you're watching this, I want to remind you of something Tom said last week, where he pointed out that most of us have negative thinking most of the time. It's our own protective mechanism. So there's two lessons to get out of this particular series of videos Tom and I are doing. One is catch yourself when you're having these negative thoughts so that you can suppress them and start thinking positively. But the other is, of course, to avoid hanging around with negative people, because they're going to drag you down. They're going to waste your time. They're going to infect you, aren't they, Tom?
Yeah, so think of the negative people as a kindling, wood, and negativity as the fire. What you want to do is starve that fire. And how you do that is by associating with positive people. They have an effect on that fire. They dampen it down. And so it's always smoldering. But when a negative person comes along, all of a sudden that fire kicks up and it starts burning wildly. And it draws you in. It sucks you in. It's a domino effect. When you associate with negative people, you become more negative.
Tom, one of the other negative traits is that negative people seem to avoid criticism. They don't like being criticized, do they?
I don't think anybody likes to be criticized, but negative people in particular, because they're closed-minded and they think they're always right, they don't like to hear anybody else's opinion when it differs from their own. And this is a real problem if that person happens to be your boss, because you're going to damage that relationship. That boss isn't going to tolerate that. And so that boss is going to put you underneath his thumb or her thumb, and you're going to hate your job. So you actually perpetuate the hatred for your job by having that mindset.
Of course, negative people always seem to know it all, don't they, Tom?
Well, they are know-it-alls, even though from what my research, negative people don't read, they don't self-educate, they're not growing, they're stuck. But they seem to know it all, and they seem to know what they're doing. Well, they do know what they're doing because they're very successful, Michael. Negative people are they're very successful because the process that they're following is succeeding in making them a failure.
So it all comes back to the things we were saying before, that they're selfish and they gossip. They seem to lack compassion, Tom.
Yeah, they're so focused on themselves. Woe is me. I'm a victim. Everybody's against me. So they're always focused on themselves. What I found with the self-made millionaires is they're focused on you. They're focused on the other person. How can I help this other person? That's the positive mindset. That's what it does. It shifts your focus from you to the other person. How can I help someone? How can I help mentor them? What can I do to improve somebody's life or make them happy? Negative people think, what can you do to make me happy? What can you do to improve my life? It's a whole different mindset.
Now, before we discuss the last of these 19 traits, I want to remind you that if you're watching this video, we're doing it, so we're explaining these things so that you understand what to do and what not to do. We want you to change. We want you to develop more rich habits and suppress some of your poor habits, replace them with rich habits. But interestingly, the last of these negative traits, Tom, that you've come around is that negative people avoid change, which is exactly the opposite of what we're trying to create here.
Yeah, look, change is uncomfortable, and negative people, they want to stay within their little circle. They don't like it when anybody comes along and disrupts that little circle. A company comes in and buys out your company. Those negative people they go into a panic because you're going to disrupt their lives. If somebody new comes into their life that from maybe a marriage or a friend of the family, they immediately go on guard. They don't like change. They're opposed to change. They're opposed to growth. And I think this whole mindset manifests in this is why they don't read and they don't self-educate themselves, because they have this mindset where they just don't want to change. They want to stay in their little circle.
Yeah, change is uncomfortable. It's scary. You're delving into the unknown. To finish off this series of 3 videos, Tom, could you please repeat that beautiful analogy about the comfort zone and the bubble that you often talk about? I know you mentioned it in an earlier video, but just because I think that's going to be a great finishing lesson for our viewers today, because they want to grow their comfort zone.
So I like to talk about the circle that we all live in. We all live in a circle. This circle is our comfort zone. And what I found in my research is that the self-made millionaires, they're constantly pushing at the edges of that circle. They're pushing themselves to do things that are different. They're taking risks. They're learning new things and then trying to apply those new things. And when they do that, they're pushing at the fringes of the circle. And when they do that, Michael, it opens up the circle, makes it wider. It widens that circle. And so if you look at any self-made millionaire, their circle is about 10 times the size of the average person, because they were constantly pushing at the edges of the circle to expand their comfort zone.
Fantastic. Tom, thank you so much. I really actually enjoyed this. I always enjoy our chats anyway, but this great series of the 19 traits of negative people, a lot of it's come from rich habits, poor habits, but there's a lot more in the book than just that, things that we don't have a chance to talk about in these videos. So if you haven't had a chance to get your copy of the book yet, go to richhabitspoorhabits.com and get your own copy. Thank you once again, Tom, and I look forward to catching up with you next week.
Yeah, sounds great, Michael. I look forward to it myself.